Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is books. So I go through about, I would say, these days, 20 to 30 books a year. It's kind of vastly increased, especially during quarantine and I have nothing else to do. So today I just really wanted to talk about how I take notes on my books. This is a new system that I've really developed through a few YouTubers. So the first one is August Bradley, which is like, he's the god of Notion, you know. He posts videos on how to build Notion and do all kind of cool things on there, and that's who I copied as for my library on Notion. And then the other one is Ali Abdal. He talks about books a lot, as well as productivity and kind of other things in those realms. So basically, I wanted to talk about how I take notes. There are some YouTubers who their note taking is too extensive for me. So typically what I'll do, so for example, let's say this guy right here. So this is a book called How to Be Everything. Okay, so it's this one. And what I'll do is I'll read it, and then I'll take notes in it. And as I take notes, I will fold back the pages, or the corners of the pages. And then that is to leave kind of a trail for myself. And what I will do is I will then go back, open this up, and then I will write little headers and then fill in notes. So a book I recently did that for, and you'll notice that my books are organized by color, which is just a weird OCD thing that I picked up from, you know, that Netflix show called The Home Edit. I was like, oh, I could do things in rainbow too. So I have like white, and then it goes into like a pink, and then a red, orange, yellow, blue, black, or gray then black kind of deal. Now, some books I was taking notes on this morning. So this book I read back during quarantine season. Well, I guess we're kind of in quarantine, but I finished it March 20th. So what I'll do is I will put the name, the thumbnail matches the image, and then I will put the subtitle, the date read, and then the status. So I only have 3 statuses. It's either it's a book to read, it's in progress, and it's complete. So it goes like red, yellow, green. And what I will do is I will just make a little header here that's slightly bigger than my text below. And then I will link other books that it mentions that I've read. Now, if I haven't read the book, it'll go on a list. But if I have read the book, I will link it. So this idea of satisficing versus maximizing was actually in the Paradox of Choice, which I saw in the book. And then I was like, oh, I've read that book, and I have notes on that book, so I'll just link it there. And so same thing here, growth mindset. This is, Carol Dweck, that research study in her book Mindset is like classic psychology book. I don't know like what rock you're under if you haven't read it, but it's mentioned in every other productivity and self-help book. So do yourself a favor and go read that. And then Grit, another just classic one that recently came out. Angela Duckworth had a great TED Talk, wrote a book. I watched it, and I bought the book and I read it. So she was mentioned in this book as well, along with Peak, which is Erickson and Poole. They're the researchers who kind of did the 10,000 hours that's mentioned in Malcolm Gladwell's book and was misquoted in Malcolm Gladwell's book. But anyway, more on that later. A little drama in the self-help world. Motivation, linked to Drive. My favorite author, Daniel Pink, wrote book Drive, and then he wrote a book called When. 2 phenomenal reads. I want to read his other book. He's so good. Just go read his books. Sometimes the books aren't necessarily talked about. If I'm reading a book and I see, okay, here is managers. What I'll do is I'll be like, oh, I read a book on, the making of a manager, so I'll link it here. But that doesn't mean it was necessarily mentioned in the book. These other ones were. Now I'm trying to think of a way to make it clear that which ones were actually mentioned in the books, and others are like ideas that are popping up in my mind, and linking books together. And this is how I really remember the books is by playing with them and linking them together to become this sort of like web of knowledge. And then if I see a study in one book that relates back to the other, it reminds me of that book, and then it just spirals, and you'll just remember everything. So it's great. And another thing I like to do is, let's see, for this book called Make Time, I had I'll post little snips from the book, so that's kind of fun. And then little websites, like here was a bonus package if you signed up, and my ass, I signed up for it, so I got the bonus package. So that I'll also do that as well. But you'll see I might add a rating here, because there are some duds, when you go through so many books a year, I read 30 books a year, there's bound to be at least 10 of those are duds. But the thing is, you don't know they're duds because you gotta read. You gotta just read, and then you'll gather the gems and get rid of the duds. For instance, this book, oh my gosh, what was it? Oh, it's called Strive. Terrible book. I read 3 phenomenal good books, and then I read this one, and I was like, oh, this is a piece of shit. Worst book I've ever read. So we're getting rid of that. That's not going on the shelf, for sure. But I still have it in here, and I got enough out of it, but I paid $18 for this damn book, and it was just so terrible. And there were a few things, and it linked to a couple of my other books, so maybe it's reinforcing some other ideas, but whatever. And so this is how I kind of take notes on my books. Now, I wish I had been doing this since I was 18, 19, or 20, I'm 23 now, and I've gone through a lot of books. But I wish I had notes from my other books, and I gave some of these books away. What I would do to go back and be I want go back and grab my books and see what notes I put in there. I wish I could go back and do that. I wish I would have been greedy and not handed them away. So, but another thing here as well, I sometimes will go, you can look at different views. So you scroll back to the top, I'm in gallery view, and I like that because it's pretty. Now you could go to calendar view, so this is the month of October, and you can see I read quite a few books. I've been on kind of a binge, and then you can kind of see, each month I read about 2 or 3 books. So on average, probably 2 a month. Now I also have a list view, which is nice if you really want to impress somebody. And then my favorite is the board view. So you'll see I'm having books to read. Grasp and Loon Shots. Okay, really good books. They're very long, and so I started them, and then they went too into details, and then I got disinterested. So I'm gonna jump back into those great books, but I just got a little bored. Right now I'm reading Dreyer's English. Let's see, I have it on my desk here. This one here. Now this one is totally outside my realm. You'll see I usually stick to self-help and productivity books, but Dreyer's English is really, it's about grammar, which, I don't know why I was in PALS and was like, oh, I'm gonna read about grammar this weekend, but he is so funny, and he just has really funny jokes, and he uses he cusses a lot, and it's just great, and he's break the rules, so I like it, and I'm thinking about reading a book eventually in my lifetime, not anytime soon, but I think, I always like to learn better English. I type emails all day, I'm always writing, so it's kind of cool. But anyway, I'm going to switch it back to the gallery view because I just think it looks the prettiest. And so that is really my spiel on books and how I take notes and the system I have. Now, I typically don't get rid of my books. I will keep them at work on a shelf, or I'll keep them in my room. People have borrowed my books and then they don't read them, which pisses me off. I don't mind, if you want to borrow my book, you borrow it, you read it. But some people, they're like, oh, can I borrow it? And then they just leave it on a shelf and it collects dust. And I'm like, you know what? I want my book back. Because that was $18. These books are not cheap. Now, a lot of people say, oh, why don't you just go to the library and use them? It's there's 2 hobbies when you read books, okay? The first hobby is the hobby of going and getting the book. Now, that is my favorite part of the hobby, because you go to Barnes & Noble, you get a nice chai, a nice iced chai, sip on it, oh, that's a nice book. Oh, that's a nice book. You pick it up, you give it a little feel, and I'm telling you, that is completely different than going home and reading the book, because two separate hobbies, collecting and actually sitting down to read. But anyway, I hope you guys liked this. It's kind of a little view into like how I take notes, and you'll see all these books are kind of linked together in this sort of web, and I just love it. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.